Active FM. Radio has never been better.
What is up?
What is going on with you?
This is the movie show.
Of course, right here on your favorite ORSPS.
And we are currently doing a Guy Ritchie marathon.
Yeah.
I'm Sash.
My name's Ryan.
And today we are looking at Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes.
2009.
Yes.
Because there's many Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, there's many.
When I had to think about the story and the plot and what happened, I was like, oh wait, that was Enola Holmes.
You're like that. There's Enola Holmes.
Because there's like chemicals and explosions involved. So I'm like, wait, wasn't that?
What are we doing? Yeah, no. So this was a 2009 film, which honestly, this film was so good from like every. But anyway, we'll get
It was great.
This film was good. When last week in our show, we tried to put our Guy Ritchie or all the Guy Ritchie films in like a list of top to bottom. And literally we said that the Sherlock Holmes films they're in a category of their own.
It's a sub movie. Sub Guy Ritchie marathon.
It really is. You know what I also think the difference though with this film is it was actually the first film that Guy Ritchie didn't write. So it was the first film, obviously there's been others now, but back then in 2009, this was the first film that he didn't write the script.
Best not written by Guy Ritchie, but produced, but directed by Guy Ritchie.
Because for me, Aladdin, I'd say it was the same, but yeah, for me, Aladdin wasn't as... No, this one was insane. It honestly was insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this... Guy Ritchie wasn't like, yo, I want to make a Sherlock Holmes film. That wasn't the case. What happened was the film production company they'd actually gotten 5 different writers together and had written the script. And they then were looking for a director who would they were looking for someone, because Sherlock Holmes is set in London, they were looking for someone who would almost do justice to the story and the setting of the story, and they couldn't think of any other better director than Guy Ritchie, who literally has the aim of showing London throughout the years. Because if you look at most of Guy Ritchie's films, they're all set in London or some part of the UK at different time frames, different time zones. He's showing off different types of people. So he's like very culture driven from a London perspective. So they were like, we are going with him. And then I know that he originally was like, that's cool, I'll join on the project. However, I don't want any of the Sherlock Holmes cliches to come in. So like he didn't want the word elementary to be used. He didn't want, there was a lot of like normal, because a lot of Sherlock Holmes adaptations had already been made before 2009, and he didn't want all of that to like cloud his vision for the film. So they said, okay, cool. So he actually visioned a very young actor for Sherlock Holmes. And when they said, let Robert Downey Jr. do it, he was like, he's too old. I want a young guy. And they'd even cast Rachel McAdams as Irene Adler so she was very young, and they cast her before they actually cast Sherlock, because they were going with this young Sherlock, all of that. But then what happened was, when Robert Downey Jr. came for the audition, Guy Ritchie was like 2 seconds in and he was like, yeah, no, this is definitely my Sherlock Holmes. So he took him on, and they were slightly concerned between the age difference between Rachel McAdams and Robert Downey Jr. But I personally... And that never crossed my mind once, honestly. And Robert Downey Jr. still assured Guy and said, don't worry, the chemistry on screen, people won't be like, oh, she's so young, pedophile, type of thing. Yeah. And then also Jude Law was someone that Guy Ritchie wanted on the film. But then he also was like, nah, he didn't really want to do it. And then Robert Downey Jr. convinced him, but he did say that he wanted Watson to have a lot more, like, he wanted the character to be more raw, like not this like little doctor running around chasing Sherlock Holmes. So and he said it was quite cool because they were actually able to go deeper into his military background, because he was part of the army. That was where Watson came from. So he was a lot like meaner in this film.
If you look at the different Sherlock Holmes that has been made, the different series in that, like the series Sherlock Holmes
with Benedict Cumberbatch,
the Dr. Watson is more like this bit clumsy, where this one, and then also the Enola Holmes, Dr. Watson is more mature, like almost with his brother, type of thing.
Well, no, Dr. Watson's, that's not Dr. Watson. That's
Not the
Sherlock,
Watson.
That's Sherlock's
Yeah.
brother.
Oh, yes.
Mycroft.
Yes.
Watson was
That's also
released
true.
at the end of
Yeah,
well,
that's
not released.
also-
What I was saying, he was revealed at the end of Enola Holmes 2.
Yeah.
Remember when he gets a knock on the door?
Oh, yes.
That's gonna be Watson.
Okay, so
yes.
I've confused.
He was the guy that played. He was in Yesterday. You know the guy in Yesterday.
Yes.
He's gonna be
Yes.
Watson if
With-
they make another Enola
on the
Holmes.
Lona Holmes. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But I almost get the same feel because in this one the partnership, right, with the Watson, like, and the brother, yes, in Enola Holmes, they're almost like I suppose that they would be on the same sort of level.
Mycroft isn't yet in. So there's two characters that didn't come into this film. One did sort of, but you never actually saw his face. That's Moriarty. So Moriarty is the guy that hired Irene Adler.
How many other? Because I think I saw an earlier Sherlock Holmes, like a much older Sherlock Holmes. I don't know if it was older before this, but what other movies or series was done before this of like a Sherlock Holmes?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Because like this was 2009.
Yeah.
And then after this, like a whole lot of Sherlock Holmes like sort of exploded.
I don't know about the series. I don't know if that came out after this. Obviously, the series was very based on the original books. The film was more. It had elements from the different books, but it was more. It was more like an original. It was made for a film. It was the first proper like film adaptation of Sherlock Holmes that also really, really, really did well. But in this one, so Moriarty is Sherlock Holmes like arch enemy type of thing. Like
That's right.
he's Sherlock Holmes in a bad way type of thing. And I don't know if you picked it up, but you know the faceless guy in this film?
Yeah.
That was Moriarty. So
Right.
he hired Irene Adler in this one. The other person who you don't see in this film is Mycroft, which is obviously Sherlock's older brother. But he then comes into there was a sequel made after this, and they bring in both. So you see Moriarty's face and you see Mycroft for the first time. And then the other person that I enjoyed a lot was Inspector Lestrade, who was played by Eddie Marsan, and he often acts in Guy Ritchie films. So I think it was nice. It was a nice combination. It really was the perfect combination of Sherlock Holmes with Guy Ritchie. They really collaborated well together. Yeah.
So the TV series was from 2010.
So it was after.
Yeah.
You know what I think actually happened? So
I think
this
Guy Ritchie
film-
did such a good job.
Yes,
The other guys were
this
like,
film did the actual studio itself didn't expect this film to do as well as it did. Like it was a huge success, and I think after that everyone was like on a Sherlock Holmes tip, and then that's where they probably for me the series is very good. Obviously it's modern, so it's a lot different. The series, though, is so different from the film. Like, for me, they're two separate pieces of work that you can't really now compare with one another. They're both good in their own rights.
Yeah.
For me, the film, though, I've always loved the Sherlock Holmes films. Like, always, it's been, like, my top. Yes. But now the interesting thing is, and this we'll be able to answer next week, right? Because we'll do the second Sherlock Holmes next week. So after this Sherlock Holmes was released, it did very, very, very well. And so the production company immediately was like, we have to do a sequel. Like they jumped on the sequel immediately. And once again, they got Guy Ritchie to direct, but they didn't get him to write it because they wanted it done so quickly. So they got other writers to write it for him. Guy Ritchie had to let go of a project he was going to work on, I think a series with DC that he actually had to cancel because the production company wanted him to do the second Sherlock Holmes. And Robert Downey Jr. also had to give up playing in Cowboys versus Aliens.
what?
Which actually I was like, I actually want to watch that movie.
Actually, yeah.
So he wasn't in that one because of the second Sherlock Holmes. And then but even though they did it so quickly, they still were able to get like good actors in. And then they obviously made the second Sherlock Holmes. An interesting thing about the second Sherlock Holmes, though, is they didn't want it to come across like a sequel. So in other words, that you can watch the second Sherlock Holmes and not have watched the first Sherlock Holmes, and you can still be fine. Like it's not, you know how with most sequels, you have to have watched the first one to watch the second one. They didn't want to do that because they wanted, obviously the Sherlock Holmes had been so hyped, and now they didn't want people to go, oh no, I can't go watch it because I haven't seen the first one. So they didn't actually tie it directly to events from the first one, which I suppose is like all the Sherlock Holmes stories. But I know that they were supposed to make a third Sherlock Holmes, which has never happened. And my question is it that the first one did so well and then the second one didn't do well, so then the production company was like, scrap the third one? And was it because they were in such a rush to make it? Like we've seen now, like Avatar. I mean, Avatar 1 comes out and then they wait like almost a decade or more than a decade. And then they make the second one, and the second one is still in cinemas. It came out like 3 months ago and it is still in cinemas. And like, even though there was such a big time gap, it's still done well. Should they have done that maybe with Sherlock Holmes and not rushed into it like they did? Would we then have...
Maybe they're waiting for the whole Sherlock Holmes thing, the whole theme to like sort of calm down and then bring it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have done that. But I suppose... Look, I enjoyed the second film. I remember enjoying the second film. But I want to watch it again because I watched it when it came out, which was like... back then, like what, 20...
And it's still good.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah.
But like, why did they not go ahead with the third one?
They're still waiting.
That would be really cool.
Timing is everything.
That would be really cool if they actually did go ahead with the third one.
So Sherlock Holmes starts as early as 1899 as a stage. No, well, as a stage play, and then eventually the first screen appearance kicked off in 1936, and then after that there was just so many different things that it I really
think
happened.
That's also why people were so reluctant to go into this film, because they were like, we've seen so many different versions of Sherlock Holmes. Like, but this one really was a reinvention of who Sherlock Holmes could do. Yeah, he wasn't just this like weird detective. He was, I'd
like to know what the detective was like in all the other screenplays. And was he he's got that like witty, sort of cocky, smart kind of, thing
I think
to him.
The one thing that we can say about Robert Downey Jr. and Guy Ritchie Sherlock is that he was more eccentric. That's literally what they said.
Yeah.
When I was watching interviews, they were like, we wanted him to be more eccentric. So I think he was more like, I don't know, like a private investigator. Like one thing they didn't bring in this one was, the hats, the detective hats. Like they ripped off all of the cliches. And I think it was nice because they were able to create something fresh, new, that it was still true to the original, the original piece of work. But and honestly, in my opinion, other people might be like, no, I know Robert Downey Jr. has a very wide range of like different roles that he's played, from a black man to what was that one where he was the one that got the soloist with Jamie Foxx. So like he's got a very wide, he's Iron Man, for crying in a bucket. But I personally think my favorite role for Robert Downey Jr. is Sherlock Holmes. Like I was watching the film and I was like, I actually think I enjoy him more as Sherlock Holmes than Iron Man.
Yeah.
And
he's actually quite a down-to-earth person. If you ever watch interviews and stuff like that with him, he's actually quite a nice guy.
Yeah. Jude Law also very big range. You often don't recognize him in the role.
No.
And for me also, he was a brilliant Watson. Like there is a certain chemistry that you have to have between Doctor Strange. I'm thinking of Benedict Cumberbatch as well. Between Sherlock Holmes and Watson, Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law definitely have that. And I did enjoy the chemistry between Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman in the series. I think they also got that right.
Yes. Yeah. Because whenever you see him, you think The Hobbit.
But not when I watched the Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. Although I do find that. We always talk about where he plays the same type of person. I find that he plays the same type of person.
Yeah.
So we've seen him. There was a movie now recently that we did where we did an American accent, right?
Wasn't it Black Panther? He's in Black Panther.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And I could see like tips and touches of that.
He's the type of actor that he plays a certain role.
You hear him say certain words the same across all his character type of thing.
Yeah. Although he did do a very good Watson, I think.
Yeah, no, he did.
And he did do a very good Bilbo Baggins.
Yes.
So like there is he does he did do a very good job. Yeah. Now the interesting thing is, so I don't know this, but I don't know if you remember in the film, there's one part where Watson says to Sherlock, you do know what you're drinking is used for eye surgery. I was like, wow. Do you know what was used as an anesthetic for eye surgery back then? Cocaine. So they were actually they were giving reference to
Why?
Holmes's cocaine usage. Who Sherlock Holmes is an addict. The character is an addict.
Oh, wow.
So they were actually referencing his cocaine addiction in saying that line because he was drinking cocaine, which is what they gave as an anesthetic for eye surgery.
So a roundabout way of...
Yeah. Which is, for me, I think is cool because you're first of all correct to the time period and you're correct to the character's different characteristics.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, this is insane. So do you know that Robert Downey Jr., Jude Law, and Rachel McAdams did most of their stunts were done by them.
Yeah.
Even the fight scenes. So I don't know if you know, in the fight scenes, you see like they did them in slow-mo.
Love those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which they actually didn't. They filmed them with a high-speed camera. So they were able to slow them down. They didn't have to do any extra filming, anything in post. Like literally they just slowed the footage down.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you saw the impact, obviously, on the guy's face. And then that's because they were actually fighting. Like it wasn't like a hit and miss and put a sound effect. You know how they normally do it in movies?
Yeah.
That's why they were able to get those scenes. And Robert Downey Jr. actually did a lot of those fighting sequences he did by himself, got hurt even. But then there was that huge guy, you know, Dredger.
Yeah.
So that guy, his name's Robert Mallet. He's actually a wrestler. I think he's a wrestler. But he's huge.
Oh, okay.
That guy is huge. It's actually slightly freaky.
Yeah.
He, in one of the scenes, accidentally hits Robert Downey Jr. over the head. Guy Ritchie apparently stopped filming immediately and got Robert to the hospital. He was fine. He did get a mild concussion, so he actually was knocked out. But he actually was fine to continue filming.
Sure.
But he actually got knocked out by the guy while filming. Whoops. Suppose he is a wrestler. Like these actors going up against like world-class wrestlers and
I understand that movies, what happens on the movie scene is not always safe.
No, it's not. It's definitely not always safe.
Yeah, I think you see that's the usage of stunt doubles and
except when your
they film it
actors are
themselves. Then you say, okay, cool. Sign here.
There we go. Yeah, sign here. But I suppose it's cool. Robert would have been cool about it as long as no one gets like seriously injured or hurt or affected. Then and then 2 actors were going to play Dr. Watson instead of Jude Law. I do not agree with either of them, even though I like these 2 actors very much. The first was Colin Farrell. I don't know. I can't see him as Watson. I must be quite honest. He's a very good actor. And he's got such a wide range. I think that's probably why I can't see him as Watson, because I'm just like. And then the second person, even though I love him, was Sam Worthington. He was supposed to be cast as Watson, but then or considered for the role, but then it went to Jude Law.
Yeah, I see. It's because the way Watson is this like English gentleman.
Yeah, that's the thing. So like Jude Law was that, because Jude Law is like an English gentleman. If you look at all of his roles, there's some form of grace to him. Do you understand? Even if he's a villain.
Yeah, Sam Worthington, I see more as this like military.
Yeah, almost emotionless or like scarred by, And then Colin Farrell, in my mind, all I see is his Irish. Because he just recently acted in an Irish film, so all I've got is that in my mind.
I don't know if you'd have the can I say etiquette, the there's just this way that a gentleman like you might
he could have pulled it off, but it
would have been interesting to see.
Now, I found this very interesting. So, I spoke about the fact that Professor Moriarty is in this film, but you never see his face. You only hear his voice. Now, when I heard his voice, I was like, I know who that is. It's the actor that acted as him in the second one. And that actor actually plays the Queen's father in the Crown series. So if you watch The Crown, he's actually a very good actor. I actually want to get his name. He's a very good actor. But now, apparently, because when I was watching the film, I immediately recognized his voice. But then, apparently, that wasn't the original voice that was used in the first movie. What they did was they actually ended up, after the second one came out, they re-recorded him. His name's Jared Harris. They re-recorded Jared Harris doing those lines again and edited the first one so that there'd be continuity between the first and second film.
And then go and have a web crawler go and everybody who downloaded the film Right.
fix it.
Pull those films back.
Oh yeah. No, that's a lot.
And replace it with the.
But
So that means that there could be
there are versions out there.
versions out there.
Where it is not. I
Great.
don't know who it was that did it. Some were rumored that it was Brad Pitt. I don't know if it was Brad Pitt. I don't know.
I think that just.
It could have been though, because Brad Pitt had
sounds
worked
like
with Guy
clickbait.
Ritchie before, but it does sound like clickbait.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Jared Harris was he's Moriarty and he's got a very distinct voice, like a very, very, very. You hear him and you're like, it's him. I knew immediately who it was, but then. When reading that, I was like, oh, because I still thought when I watched a video and they said they got Jared Harris in, I was like, but he was in the first one. And then I saw the facts that no, he actually wasn't. But they did change his voice so that in Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows,
it
when he was
matches.
Moriarty, there was
It wouldn't-
continuity.
It wouldn't make sense. It
Yeah.
would be weird. Quite a bold step to do that.
Yeah.
Go and re-edit. Someone has to.
Although luckily, first of all, they didn't have to lip sync because you don't see his mouth at all. And secondly, he only had like 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines at max, like maximum 4 lines.
Wow. Cool. That's cool.
I remember we once had to record ADR, which is additional dialogue recording for a lot of people actually, but one of the characters had a bandana constantly over her
yeah.
mouth because she had a bad scar and she was trying to hide it. It was so easy to record her ADR because there was no lip syncing needed. She just needed to reset. In fact, she bettered her performance in the ADR, but it was also because there was no like you have to match your mouth exactly. So I suppose
They're
there's
just
yeah. And then this film is 2 hours and 8 minutes long. It doesn't feel like that though. It's such a good film. This film, I would watch it again, even though I've watched it again for the movie show. I would watch it again,
we
type
have
of
watched
thing.
it again, yeah.
Like a third time, fourth time. And then this is not accurate, but I just laughed because Google has the genre. You know how normally has like action thriller or like action comedy. The genre for this film is mystery.
Right. Yeah.
That's how mysterious this
There's
film
mystery
is.
and then there's
There's mystery and mystery. Yeah. That is the genre of
very mysterious.
Sherlock Holmes.
Very,
Yeah.
very, very.
Yeah.
So, yep.
So we're definitely doing Sherlock Holmes 2 next week if you want to go watch it
Some
so that
cool
you
scenes.
know.
Some very cool sequences in
Yeah.
the second one.
I specifically remember them running in the forest.
That's the one.
Like that sequence.
That's
I
the
watched
one.
it in cinemas. I remember watching the movie in cinemas and I was like, wow. But even the cinematographer, he was brilliant in this film and he used a lot of natural lights. So like a lot of the light sources were natural lights,
Bold
which
step.
which was, but also it was authentic to the
It does,
PR.
yeah.
And then I know that we never mentioned the distribution company's logos at the beginning of movies.
Oh, yeah.
No, we did for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that film. But this film was brilliant. The way it was all on like a cobblestone street and then the logos were engraved and the camera like did this pan and then it like tilted up into that was brilliant.
Isn't it a Guy Ritchie trait as well? The whole logo in the beginning with the
Where he matches it.
No, where he takes he does a whole cool creative thing, in the beginning.
It
with
is
the names
possible.
And stuff,
It is possible that he does that. Yeah, because often he'll even like fit the sound. I'm sure he fits the sound even to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. Honestly, this is one of Guy Ritchie's best, but it's still in a category of its own because it's not. It was his first. It was his first R-rated film. No, what's an R-rated film? It was the first film where like kids could watch it, for example, because it didn't have swearing and like. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like normally his films are quite explicit.
Yeah.
This was his first film that wasn't like that.
Oh, that's true.
So it really is in like a category of its own. Like Guy Ritchie's films, then you have
Great.
Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes and Aladdin. I don't know about the other films. I'm sure the other films are.
But Sherlock Holmes is at the top. And I actually really would like them to make a third one. Still to this
I think
day,
they
I'd
should.
love them to make a third one.
Yeah, I think they should.
Yeah, hopefully they will. We've gotten Top Gun Maverick, Avatar. Maybe they'll just, give us what we want.
And none of those, Sherlock Holmes is now played by...
No.
Still Robert
Same.
Downey Jr.
They must just, even if they've aged, they must just use them at the
20
age
years
they're
later
at.
or whatever.
Like Sherlock Holmes was
Sherlock Holmes is retired. He's enjoying his pipe there.
his cocaine, his eye surgery.
And then something
anesthetic.
happens and then he has to get involved in
Watson
the case.
gets kidnapped.
Ooh.
Mary gets kidnapped. Yeah.
You see?
Or Blackwood comes back from the dead.
Yeah.
Again.
Again.
All Lestrade just comes and he's like, Sherlock, we're really struggling with the case,
Yeah.
and I can't retire if we don't solve this case, and I'd really like to retire, so help me out, man. Yeah, there we go. That's their plot. You're welcome. Now Guy Ritchie just has to make it. This has been the movie show.
On your favorite ORSPS?
Peace.
Radio has never been better, baby. This is Active FM. Go to www.activefm.co.za for more.